Chapter 25. Warren and his chairs. The room was sparse, except for a pot plant and a desk. The former sat upon the latter, which only drew attention to the room's lack of things. There were 2 chairs also, but because both were occupied, neither were relevant. Thomas sat in one, and a man named Warren sat in the other, who studied Thomas with the sort of intimacy that left him wishing he'd been asked out to dinner first. Although Warren was apparently one of the country's leading psychiatrists, he appeared young enough to have trouble spelling the word, which did little to fill Thomas with encouragement. "Do you feel uncomfortable, Thomas?" "Oh, considering that I've just been smashed in the face by a cricket bat, your need to ask that question doesn't fill me with encouragement." "Would you like to be filled with encouragement, Thomas?" "Another question that does you little credit." There was a pause. "I suggest you are being hostile because you are uncomfortable." "Blimey! No wonder you're a psychiatrist." "And you're uncomfortable because you suspect things about yourself that you think I already know." "Well, that's convenient. I can probably go home then." "No, you can't, because although I might know certain things about you, I want to know whether you do." Thomas stared at him. "Are you quite convinced we're having the same conversation?" "Do you want to have the same conversation, Thomas?" "I want something to make sense, and this doesn't. In fact, I think I've forgotten my name, which is odd, considering your habit of adding it to the end of every sentence." "Does my using your name make you feel uncomfortable, Thomas?" "No, but you're beginning to piss me off more than a well-placed catheter." "I want to know why you're feeling uncomfortable, Thomas." "I've just told you." "No, you haven't. You're using sarcasm to avoid the issue." "What issue?" "You tell me." "I just want to go home." Warren jotted something down on a pad. "Is that because you know that you're ill?" he asked, looking up. "Once again, that I'm sitting here with a sutured face rather renders an answer superfluous, don't you think?" "Are you certain an answer's superfluous, Thomas? Or do you perhaps feel that you are?" Thomas put his face in his hands and then swore when it hurt. "I shouldn't even be here. I should be home." "Is that because home is safe?" "No, it's because you're not there." "Your hostility is not helping you, Thomas." "No, but a cricket bat would." "Is aggression an issue for you?" "No, but I'm surprised it hasn't become one for you." "I see. You are exhibiting avoidance, Thomas, and Would you stop using my name every time you speak? It's really starting to shit me sideways." "Is that because you don't like yourself?" "No, it's because I don't like you." Warren leant forward and put his pad of paper on his knee. "Let me tell you something, Thomas. I am here to help, not hinder. But I cannot do so if you do not wish to engage. I cannot help you unless you want to be helped. And this defensive, dismissive and sarcastic attitude is not helping either of us. Ultimately, it doesn't affect me. I'm paid regardless, but it does affect you, Thomas. I have treated thousands of patients in my career, but I cannot help you become one of them if you refuse to let yourself be helped." Thomas squinted at him. "How unnecessarily complicated the world must appear to you." Warren leant back and readied his pen. "And what do you mean by that?" "I mean that you have to look for problems, don't you? And if there aren't any, you're forced to poke around until you find something resembling one." "You don't think you have problems, Thomas?" "Having problems is normal. Jotting them down in bullet points on pads isn't." "Do you mean that it's normal to have problems, Thomas, or it's normal to have yours?" "I mean that people in your position cannot abide letting other people just be, can you? You have to look for problems, which we all have, and then squeeze them like pimples until they ruin the mirror." "I am perfectly content to allow others to be, Thomas, if they're not a danger to themselves or others." "And you think I'm a danger to others?" "There's an entire industry accusing you of being very dangerous indeed." "Ah, I see. That's what all this is about." "And what's that exactly?" "You're part of it, aren't you?" "Part of what, Thomas?" "Part of their plan to have me certified. Part of their plan to have me rendered a danger to the public. Part of their plan to banish me from writing." "I can assure you that's not the case." You couldn't assure me of anything. Do you know how long I've been fighting this thing? Thing? Yes, this case against me. Nearly 12 months. That's 12 months of my life that's been squeezed, crushed, bankrupted and humiliated. They want me to crumble. They want me to break. They want me to surrender and crawl under a rock and die. But I won't. I'm a writer, and I'll always be a writer. There's nothing they can do to stop me writing. Well, there is. They can make it illegal and put you in prison. Thomas sank back into the chair, having not realised he'd risen from it. Warren put down his pen and sighed. Thomas, I am not in any conspiracy against you. I am a clinical professional who's highly regarded in my field. My purpose is to evaluate you on that basis only. Thomas looked at him. Have you read my books? No. Don't you think it might be useful to? I think it would be more useful if you told me about them. Are you scared of them? Scared? Yes, of my books. My job is to evaluate people, not read their books. Thomas scoffed. I would have thought that reading their books would give you far greater insight than trying to prize bits out of resistant facades. You could take notes, too, and jot them down on that thing. I can't read your books, Thomas, for the simple reason that they're unreadable. Ah, so you have read them? No, I haven't, but I do read the newspapers, and I'm under the impression that were I to, I'd be left in the sort of mental state that would be better managed by us swapping chairs. Thomas scoffed. Oh, brilliant. So you'd rather take the word of massively biased media rather than formulate an opinion of your own. Well, how delightfully impartial your evaluation's going to be, Warren. Thomas, if I read your books, there's a good chance that I wouldn't be capable of formulating an opinion of any sort. I can't believe someone in your position wouldn't be more open-minded. Warren put his pen down again. Thomas, you seem to be forgetting two important points. Firstly, the media's opinion of your books is not the opinion of only one or two individuals, but the unanimous judgment of journalists as a whole. Only because the publishing industry owns the media. And secondly, that you yourself also admit the books are dreadful. Yes, but at least I've read the things. So the bottom line is that not only does an entire industry think your writing is dreadful, but that you agree with them. And we're not just talking about a newspaper, but all of them. And not just a television program, but all of them. And not just a magazine, but all of them. Even your mother, for goodness sakes, thinks your books are ghastly. So I think it's safe to say, on the balance of opinion, that your writing is so bad that there's simply no argument to be made on the matter, because there's nothing to counter said argument with. Now, let's move on. I don't feel well. Then it's fortunate you're in a hospital, Thomas. Well, how do you think it feels to be told that the one thing you're compelled to do is rubbish? Warren readied his pen again. Why don't you tell me? Thomas sighed and looked at the pot plant on the table, suspecting the world would be far easier to understand if convention-assisted tables sat on pot plants. Sometimes I wish I could just start again, he said, and not bugger things up as much as I have. I'd still have written the books, of course, but I might have gotten an opinion on them before self-publishing the things. You would still have written them? Of course. Despite having been bankrupted and humiliated by them? Writing's what I do. Warren wrote some things down. When did you first decide you wanted to be a writer? He asked. Thomas thought for a time. I think it was when I lost my cat. Your cat? Yes, when he died. I missed him, you see, and so began making up stories about him to pretend he hadn't. And they became your books? Yes, said Thomas, finding it difficult to remember specifics because of various childhood traumas. It might seem odd not to be able to recall, but they were written so badly that once I'd finished them, I couldn't determine what I'd been on about. They were about cats, I think, and dogs, and the bizarre antics that carried on in a world populated by them. That's why I thought people might like them. If the characters were human, the book's absurdity wouldn't be believable. Clearly I was wrong. Absurdity? Thomas shrugged. Well, stupidity then, I don't know. The silly things that can happen in a world unrestrained by conventional society. What sort of things? Well, they get gastric worms, for example, and have manicured claws and fight over food, that sort of thing. And what do they do, these animals? I just told you. No, I mean specifically. Plot-wise. Plot? Yes. Plot, Thomas repeated thoughtfully. I've heard of that. Isn't that something to do with words? Yes, no, I mean, what happens in your books? Or generally? Generally. Well, the main character's a spy. Well, he's like a spy, but he's not very good at it. He succeeds because of the characters he meets. Succeeds? Yes, you know, in his assignments. He goes gallivanting around the world trying to stop it from being taken over by baddies. Sometimes there are dinner parties. Well, that sounds quite amusing, Thomas, Warren said, jotting this down. Yes, Thomas sighed. They would be, if I wasn't so shit at writing them. Maybe you could learn how to not be so shit. I think you'll find, Warren, that there are 3 types of dreadful writers in this world. Those who are shit and do something about it, those who are shit and don't believe themselves to be, and me. And in what way are you different from the others, Thomas? Because I'm shit and will always be shit. I'm like a shit that's been shat. So why don't you learn not to be shit? Because I'm scared I'll lose my originality. I see. Some more jotting. But can't you see not being shit as a means to express yourself better? Well, not really. Why not? Because I'm more scared that there isn't anything better. Warren jotted this down too. But losing your originality might be a good thing, Thomas, considering it's landed you in court and hospital and bankrupted you both emotionally and financially. Yes, but at least I still have my integrity. Are you quite certain of that, Thomas? To this, he said nothing.